A signal of desperation. In the cold silence of space, a weak signal pulsed through the void, faint and broken, carrying a single desperate message. Please. Anyone, help us. It came from the dying world of Virelia, once a shining empire of art, light, and peace, now reduced to a field of burning cities and shattered skies. The Virelians had always believed the galaxy would protect them. They had friends in the Galactic Council. They had treaties, alliances, promises, but promises meant nothing when the Zarth Dominion arrived. The Zarth were not conquerors, they were predators, cold and mechanical, their ships shaped like blades, their voices hollow and cruel. They came without warning, without reason, simply to take, to burn, to enslave. Within days, entire planets fell, fleets vanished, and hope became a word no one dared to speak. On Virelia's last surviving command center, a small group of engineers huddled around a broken transmitter, their faces pale under the red glow of emergency lights. Signal strength is dropping, one said, his hands shaking. No one is going to hear us. Send it anyway, replied the chief, her voice trembling but firm. Even if it drifts for 1,000 years, someone might hear. So they sent it, a cry for help, encoded in every frequency they could reach, and then they waited. Above them, the Dominion fleet darkened the sky, raining fire upon the last remaining cities. The air filled with screams, static, and the endless hum of destruction. The Galactic Council received the signal first, but their response was silence to them. Virelia was a lost cause, a strategic inconvenience, and saving them meant war, and no one wanted war with the Dominion. So the Council turned off the transmission and marked the Virelian sector as unreachable. But the signal didn't stop. It escaped their network, bouncing from relay to relay, drifting farther into the deep unknown. It passed through abandoned systems, dead worlds, and forgotten satellites until it reached the edge of the known galaxy. There, far beyond the Council's maps, it brushed against a long-range listening post, human-made, old but still alive on Earth's orbital defense station. An operator named Lieutenant Mara caught the faint sound while checking static logs. At first she thought it was interference, a ghost frequency, but then she heard the voice, broken, terrified, pleading. This is the Virelian Empire. Please, anyone help us. She froze, her heart pounding. The name Virelian wasn't in any recent records. It was from the old Galactic archives, the ones humans weren't supposed to access. Mara ran the data through the filters, and the image came up. A ruined planet, burning cities, alien bodies scattered across the sand. For a long moment she couldn't breathe. Then she whispered, Commander, you need to see this. Within minutes, the command deck filled with officers and analysts, everyone staring at the ghostly image of a dying world. Admiral Reyes, tall and calm, stood at the center, his eyes locked on the feed. Origin point? He asked. Outer Sector 79 Alpha. Unaligned space, Mara replied. No response from the Council network. Reyes leaned forward, his voice low. Then this came to us directly. He looked at the signal's timestamp. It was only a few days old, which meant whoever sent it might still be alive. For a moment no one spoke. The only sound was the faint heartbeat of the transmission. Then Reyes gave a quiet order. Patch it through to command, and prepare the fleet. The officers looked at one another. Uncertain, sir, one asked carefully. Permission from the Council? Reyes turned to him with a cold smile. We don't ask permission to save lives. Across the station, alarms began to sound as systems came online. Engines hummed to life, and encrypted orders spread through hidden networks on the far side of the moon. Vast hangars began to open. The Deathworld Fleet was stirring. Titan-class ships resting for decades in silence now glowed with power. Their hulls, black as night, bore the scars of ancient wars, names like Nemesis, Leviathan, Horizon carved into their armor. Humanity had been quiet for too long, isolated from the galaxy, feared and forgotten, but now someone had called for help. And humans didn't ignore cries for help. In the Admiral's command room, Mara asked softly, Sir, what should we tell them? Reyes looked out the viewport, watching the first warship rise from the shadows of Earth. Tell them. He paused, his voice turning cold as iron. That help is coming, far away on the burning world of Virelia. The last surviving engineers huddled together in silence. Their consoles flickered one last time. A faint echo returning through the static. A signal received. They didn't understand the language. but they recognized the tone and a promise. For the first time in weeks, one of them smiled through tears, whispering, "Someone heard us." The stars above their ruined world began to shimmer, and somewhere in the darkness of deep space, the engines of humanity's Deathworld Fleet roared awake. And the galaxy, though it didn't know it yet, was about to remember why humanity was feared. Because when Earth answered a call for help, the universe trembled. The awakening of Titans, across the silent void surrounding Earth, something ancient was waking in the darkness of orbit. Hundreds of colossal structures began to move. Orbital hangars older than most empires. Sealed for decades, their metal walls covered in warning symbols and forgotten insignias. Inside, under dim emergency lights, engineers rushed through corridors, unlocking systems that hadn't been touched in years. The words Project Titanfall flashed across old digital screens, followed by one phrase that sent chills through every human watching. Authorization. Deathworld protocol engaged. Admiral Reyes stood in the observation bay, watching the first warship awaken. The Leviathan, a Titan-class battleship nearly 20 kilometers long, its dark armor reflecting the pale light of Earth. Its engines began to burn a deep blue, rumbling like a sleeping god taking its first breath. Crew members inside felt the vibration through their boots as power surged through every deck, lighting up forgotten halls with blinding brilliance. "Status report," Reyes commanded, his voice echoing through the bridge. "All major systems green, sir. Reactor stable." "Weapon cores charging," replied Commander Hale. His tone calm but eyes wide with awe. Reyes nodded slowly. "Good. Let's wake them all." And with that single command, the fleet began to rise. From the shadow of the moon emerged Nemesis, its wings folded like a great predator preparing to strike. From the asteroid belt came Horizon, built from the wreckage of humanity's first interstellar war. One by one the Titans came alive: Omen, Retribution, Vanguard, and Erebus, names spoken with both fear and reverence. Each ship carried its own legend, its own history of battles fought when humanity was still young and reckless. Within hours, the orbit around Earth transformed into a storm of motion, hundreds of smaller escort ships aligning beside the Titans, refueling stations reconnecting, drone carriers launching automated fleets for recon. The human fleet, once thought disbanded, now blazed across the stars like a constellation reborn. In the main command hall, Admiral Reyes addressed his officers. "Somewhere out there a species is dying," he began, his tone quiet but heavy. They called for help, and no one answered. He paused, looking around the room. Every soldier standing at attention. "We are not conquerors. We are not saviors, but when we hear a cry for help, we answer." Silence followed, broken only by the hum of the ship's reactor. Reyes turned to the display showing the Virelian distress signal, looping endlessly in the background. "That voice out there." "It's depending on us." Commander Hale raised a question carefully. "Sir, what about the Council? You know they forbade human intervention beyond the neutral zone." Reyes gave a faint smile. "The Council forbade us from existing too, remember? Yet here we are." A few officers chuckled quietly, tension breaking for a moment, before he continued. "Set course for Virelia, and prepare the fleet for FTL jump." Deep inside the Leviathan's engine chamber, the jump drives began to hum, drawing in massive energy. Outside, the stars started to blur, as space itself seemed to twist under the pressure of human technology. The fleet's AI voice echoed through the decks, calm and haunting. "Warning, Deathworld jump protocol initializing. All crew secure positions." Lieutenant Mara, sitting at the comms console, whispered softly. "We're really doing this. We're going to war again." Reyes placed a hand on her shoulder. "Not war, Lieutenant. We're going to keep a promise." And with that, the countdown began. 10, 9, 8. Across every ship, hearts pounded, engines roared, lights dimmed, and the very fabric of space began to tear open. At 0, the fleet vanished into the dark, leaving behind only shockwaves and silence. Moments later, far away across the galaxy, the Zarth Dominion continued their assault on Virelia, their black ships orbiting like vultures over a dying world. Suddenly, their sensors picked up something impossible: a massive gravitational surge from deep space. The Dominion commander leaned forward, his voice sharp. "Identify that anomaly," a technician stammered. "Unknown. It's not a natural phenomenon, multiple objects incoming at high velocity." Then the stars twisted. and the sky above Virelia ignited. The Deathworld Fleet had arrived. In the burning atmosphere, alien soldiers looked up, their crimson skies now streaked with blue light as the human ships emerged one after another. Enormous, silent, and terrifying. Every Virelian survivor watching from the ground felt the air tremble, unsure whether they were seeing salvation or something far worse. On the Leviathan's bridge, Admiral Reyes stood still, his reflection shining against the stars. "Open a channel," he ordered a moment later. His voice echoed across every Dominion frequency, calm and cold as death. "This is Admiral Reyes of the Terran Deathworld Fleet," he said. "You attacked a world that asked for help. That was your first and last mistake," and then with a gesture, he raised his hand and spoke the words that would be remembered across galaxies. "Fire!" The Leviathan's cannons roared, cutting through the void, tearing the first Dominion ship apart in a single shot. In that instant, the galaxy understood something ancient and terrible. Humanity had returned, and the Deathworlders did not come in peace. The battle for Virelia. The night sky above Virelia burned like a second sun for the first time in centuries. The planet's atmosphere glowed not with beauty but with war. The Zarth Dominion's fleet, black and metallic, turned their weapons upward as the Deathworlders appeared. Dozens of human Titan-class ships formed a silent formation, engines humming like ancient beasts preparing to strike. Inside the Dominion's flagship, panic spread through the command deck. "Unidentified fleet entering orbit," shouted one of the alien officers, his scaled hands trembling. "Identify origin," barked the commander, his eyes narrowing. "Unknown, sir." "Signatures are old, very old," came the terrified reply. The commander growled. "Destroy them before they reach the planet." Hundreds of Zarth warships unleashed beams of plasma, turning the sky into a storm of light. But the human fleet didn't retreat. They advanced on board the Leviathan. Admiral Reyes stood unmoving, his gaze locked on the tactical map. "Status," he said calmly. "Shields at full, sir." "No damage," replied Commander Hale. Reyes gave a small nod, then returned the favor. In a single synchronized motion, every human ship fired. Blue-white lances of energy tore through the dark, slicing through the Dominion's formation like a blade through water. Entire Zarth cruisers exploded instantly, their hulls breaking apart, fragments falling into Virelia's atmosphere as burning debris. The shockwave rolled across the planet, shaking buildings and scattering ash on the surface. The Virelians watched in disbelief for weeks. They had lived under the sound of destruction, the endless screams of bombardment. Now they heard a different sound, thunder that came from above. But this time it wasn't fear they felt, it was awe. An old man looked up from the ruins of a temple, tears in his eyes, whispering, "The stars. They're fighting for us." Inside the Dominion's fleet, chaos reigned. "Pull back. They're tearing through our lines." One shouted, "Who are they?" Screamed another. No one had an answer, but across every alien comm channel, a name began to spread. Deathworlders. A word from ancient history, a word that meant unstoppable. The Nemesis launched a wing of drones, each one carrying micronuclear payloads. They swarmed into the Dominion's flank. Detonating like a storm of suns, the horizon followed. Using railguns so powerful they created visible ripples in space. Every shot vaporized a warship. Every explosion echoed like a heartbeat of vengeance. On the Leviathan, Lieutenant Mara monitored the surface. "Sir, multiple life signs detected. Survivors in the southern continent," she said quickly. Reyes turned to her. "Then let's make sure they stay alive." He pointed toward the planet. "Deploy the Guardian Division, a ground drop." Moments later, massive drop pods ejected from the fleet, each one carrying human soldiers in heavy exosuits. They pierced the atmosphere like falling meteors. Crashing into Virelian soil with thunderous force, the soldiers emerged, their armor glowing faintly blue under the fire-lit sky. One of them looked at the ruins around him and muttered, "This place looks like Earth." "After the old wars," his commander replied coldly. "Then let's make sure it doesn't end the same way." Human troops advanced through the wrecked cities. Engaging Dominion ground forces, the aliens tried to resist. But the Deathworlders moved with terrifying precision. No wasted motion, no hesitation. Every shot was lethal, every strike deliberate. The Dominion soldiers who had enslaved worlds now found themselves retreating for the first time. Meanwhile, in orbit, the battle reached its peak. The Dominion's flagship, Kraxor Prime, turned all its cannons toward the Leviathan, firing a massive energy beam capable of destroying moons. The beam hit, shaking the human flagship violently. Alarms blaring across every deck. Shields collapsing. Shouted Hale. "We can't take another hit." Reyes clenched his jaw, then spoke quietly. "Then we won't need to." He walked to the command console, typing in an override code. The ship's AI voice spoke softly. "Warning. Overcharge protocol will destroy main reactor." "I know," Reyes replied. "Target their flagship." A long silence followed, then Hale whispered, "Sir, that will kill us." Reyes looked at him, calm as ever. "Then we'll make it count." But before he could confirm the order, another voice cut through the static. It was the Horizon's captain. "Commander Voss, Admiral, let us take the shot," Voss said firmly. "You've got survivors down there to protect, and let us end this." Reyes hesitated for a brief moment, then nodded. "Do it." The Horizon aligned its main cannon, charging for 30 full seconds as the enemy's flagship tried to flee. Then in one blinding flash it fired. The shot punched straight through Craxer Prime's hull, splitting it in half before it even exploded. The resulting blast lit up the entire orbit, brighter than any sunrise. When the light faded, silence filled the skies. The Dominion fleet was gone, every remaining ship either destroyed or fleeing at full speed into the dark sectors. Virelia was free on the surface as the smoke cleared. A small Virelian child peeked out from under a collapsed bridge, staring at the human soldiers walking through the ash. One of the soldiers saw her, knelt down and gently handed her a small ration pack. The girl blinked in confusion, then whispered, "Are you gods?" The soldier smiled faintly through his cracked visor. "No, kid," he said softly. "We're just from Earth, high above." Admiral Reyes watched the battlefield from the Leviathan's bridge. He looked at the ruined planet below and murmured quietly, "War never changes, but maybe mercy can." And somewhere deep in the shadows of the galaxy, the Dominion survivors transmitted one terrified message. They came from the Deathworld, and they're not human. The price of mercy. The smoke above Virelia was beginning to fade. What had once been a world of fire and ruin now lay quiet, broken but alive for the first time in weeks. The sky was clear enough to see the stars again, though many of them were now human warships silently orbiting the planet like watchful guardians. The Deathworld Fleet had ended the Dominion threat, but their presence carried a weight heavier than any weapon. On the ground, human soldiers moved among the ruins, helping the surviving Virelians rebuild what was left. They shared water, food, and medical supplies. Refusing payment, refusing thanks, one Virelian elder, his skin pale and scarred from burns, looked at a human medic who was treating his arm. "You are helping us?" he asked slowly, struggling with the words. The medic nodded, smiling under her cracked visor. "You called for help," she said simply. "So we came." Above them, Admiral Reyes watched the planet from the Leviathan's command deck. Dozens of smaller ships were descending, carrying repair drones, engineers, and medics. Commander Hale approached him quietly. "Sir, humanitarian operations are proceeding. We've secured all major cities." Reyes nodded, but his expression was distant. "And the Dominion?" "Retreated beyond the Orion Veil," Hale replied. "No contact since," Reyes exhaled slowly. "They'll be back someday," he murmured. "They always come back." Hours passed, and the news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Every world, every outpost, every empire whispered the same word, humans. Some spoke it with awe, others with fear. The Galactic Council, who had once labeled Earth a restricted civilization, now gathered in secret sessions, their faces pale as they watched the footage of Titan-class ships tearing through the Dominion fleet. "They broke the neutral accords," one counselor said angrily. "They saved an entire species," another replied. "They could save us, or destroy us," whispered a third, and silence followed. Back on Virelia, the capital's main plaza was being cleared of rubble. Alien children helped human engineers carry materials, while drones floated overhead, rebuilding shattered towers. A group of Virelian leaders stood near the landing zone, waiting nervously as Admiral Reyes arrived in person. The alien governor, Cyril, bowed slightly, her voice trembling. "Admiral Reyes of Earth, on behalf of my people, I thank you. We have nothing left to offer." Reyes looked at her for a long moment before answering. "We didn't come for anything," he said softly. "We came because you asked." Cyril blinked, confused. "But why?" Reyes smiled faintly, his gaze drifting toward the burning horizon. "Because once," he said, "long ago, humanity sent a signal too, a cry for help. and no one answered. The silence that followed carried the weight of countless lost worlds. Reyes continued quietly. So we made a promise. If anyone ever called for help, we would answer, no matter the cost. Soral's eyes glistened with tears. And what will the cost be for you? She asked. Reyes didn't reply, but he looked toward the sky where the fleet hovered, massive, silent, and unstoppable. That night, the human soldiers and the Varelians shared a single campfire among the ruins. Stories were told. Laughter echoed through broken streets, and for a moment the galaxy's horrors seemed distant. But in the shadows, not everyone celebrated. A group of council observers arrived secretly on the planet. Dressed in silver robes, their insignia glowing faintly, they approached Admiral Reyes during a late patrol. Admiral Reyes, one said coldly, you have violated galactic law. Reyes didn't even turn. You mean the law that left them to die? The neutral accord forbids your kind from military action beyond Sol, the counselor snapped. You've reignited the Deathworlder legend. The galaxy remembers what your people are capable of. Reyes turned then, his gaze sharp as steel. Good, he said, his voice low. Let them remember. The counselors hesitated, fear flickering in their eyes. You're playing with fire, one whispered. Reyes looked past them toward the Varelian skyline. Fire is what keeps the dark away, he said, and walked off into the night days later. The rebuilding efforts came to an end. The Varelian people stood together as the humans prepared to leave. Governor Soral stepped forward. We owe you our lives, she said. But what can we give in return? Reyes smiled faintly. Remember, he said simply, that mercy doesn't make you weak. As the fleet began to rise, thousands of Varelians watched from below, their hearts filled with both gratitude and fear. In orbit, the human ships aligned for departure. Lieutenant Mara sat at her console, staring at the planet shrinking on the display. Sir, she said softly, they'll talk about this for generations. Reyes nodded. They should, he replied. Because this wasn't a victory. Mara frowned. Then what was it? Reyes looked out at the stars, his voice barely above a whisper. A reminder. And as the Deathworld Fleet disappeared into the void, the galaxy began to tremble again. Because mercy from Earth was never free, it always came with a warning. And somewhere, hidden among the stars, the Dominion was already rebuilding, whispering to each other in terror. The humans are awake again. And this time they didn't come to conquer. They came to protect. But everyone in the galaxy knew one truth, whispered in every language. When Deathworlders protect you, even your enemies learn the meaning of fear. The message to the Galaxy Weeks had passed since the Battle of Varelia. The fires had cooled, the smoke had lifted, and in the heart of the galaxy, silence had replaced chaos. But silence never lasted long when humanity was involved. Across thousands of star systems, strange signals began to appear, transmissions marked with the ancient Earth emblem, a blue sphere surrounded by silver wings. Every receiver, every comm tower, every listening satellite that caught the signal played the same message. A calm, steady voice spoke through the static. This is Admiral Reyes of the Terran Deathworld Fleet, it said. To all who hear this, help will always come. The message spread like wildfire, echoing through empires and colonies. To some, it sounded like hope, to others like a warning. Because those who had seen what humanity did at Varelia knew one truth. When the Deathworlders answered a call for help, they didn't just save, they changed everything. On the Galactic Council's capital world, panic had turned into debate. Humanity has broken isolation, one counselor said furiously. They've intervened in open space, destroyed a Dominion fleet. Another replied, and saved billions of lives. They're unpredictable, uncontrollable, a third shouted. The Deathworlders are not saviors, they are storms. But deep down, even the counselors knew the truth. No one else had dared to act, and humanity had meanwhile on Earth. The people watched the news in silence for generations. They had been told that humanity was feared, dangerous, untamed. But now, the galaxy was whispering their name again, not as monsters, but as protectors. In every city, from New London to Neo-Tokyo, people gathered to watch the broadcast of Admiral Reyes's message, replaying across the stars. Children pointed at the screens, eyes wide with pride. That's us, they said softly. We're the Deathworlders far away. In the ruins of Varelia, life had begun again. Grass grew over the scorched ground. Rivers ran clear once more. Virelian ships carried food and medicine to neighboring systems, all marked with a single human phrase painted on their hulls. Help will always come. Governor Cyril stood beneath the rebuilt command tower. Staring up at the sky, her aide approached quietly. Governor, the council has asked us to stay silent about humanity's involvement. Cyril smiled faintly, her eyes full of determination. No, she said. The galaxy deserves to know who saved us. That same day, a live broadcast was sent across every open frequency. Cyril appeared on screens everywhere, her voice trembling but powerful. To all who hear this, she began, we are the people of Virelia, and we were saved. Not by the council, not by allies, but by Earth. The entire galaxy froze as her next words echoed through space. When we cried for help, it was humanity who answered. She turned toward the camera, her voice growing stronger. They came not to conquer, but to protect, not to rule, but to defend what was right. Remember this, she said, when darkness comes again, because somewhere out there, the Deathworlders are watching. The message spread faster than anyone could stop it. On the Dominion's hidden worlds, warlords listened in silence, remembering the fire that tore through their fleets on the Council's home planet. Diplomats argued in panic as their authority crumbled, and on distant colonies, oppressed species lifted their heads in hope for the first time. Admiral Reyes sat quietly aboard the Leviathan. Watching the broadcast replay, Lieutenant Mara stood beside him. Sir, the Council will hate this, she said softly. Reyes gave a faint smile. Good, he replied. Fear keeps them honest, Mara hesitated. And what about the Dominion? Reyes leaned back, staring at the stars beyond the viewport. They'll come again, he said. They always do. He paused, then added in a calm, heavy tone. And when they do, they'll find we're still listening. Outside, the Deathworld Fleet drifted silently among the stars, their hulls glowing faintly under the light of distant suns. Each ship carried scars from countless wars, symbols of humanity's resilience. They weren't the galaxy's rulers nor its judges, but they had become something greater, its guardians. The galaxy would remember this day forever. The day when an ancient legend returned not as a curse but as hope, when Earth answered a cry for help and changed the fate of a world, when the Deathworlders reminded everyone that humanity's greatest weapon was not their fire, but their heart. As the Leviathan turned slowly toward the black void, a final transmission was sent. This is Earth, the message said. If you are in danger, send your signal and we will hear it. And somewhere in the deep silence between the stars, countless civilizations looked up with trembling hearts, because they now knew what it meant when the humans came. They called it salvation, others called it warning. But everyone in the galaxy agreed on one thing. When Deathworlders answer, the stars themselves hold their breath.